It's live. Good evening, friends. My apologies for the delay. I, Sneha Taishete, on behalf of IER, warmly welcome all our participants and our speakers for today. The Institute of Environmental Architecture and Research is a Mumbai based educational research and training institute. It's a vision to create a sustainable environment through scientific research, education and training, socio-cultural understanding, community engagement, and awareness. We are a multidisciplinary group of scientists, professionals, and academicians who have worked forces to form this organization, having worked collaboratively for more than 15 years on education, environment consultancy, and awareness. Our mission is Environment First. This is the 12th webinar in the series, which we started during the lockdown period. So far, we have reached out to more than 1900 participants altogether. Our major objective in this webinar series is to provide educational and research inputs and scientific and analytical approach to environmental issues. I'm happy to announce that the Institute's foundation date falls on 14th of August 2019 and it was registered as a public trust on 19th October 2019. Hence, we are excited and happy to celebrate IAR's first public trust day on 17th October 2020 with all of you. More updates on the same will follow soon through mails and social media pages. I would now welcome our moderator, Dr. Rashmi Udyawar Yehuda, President of IAR, to introduce our today's speaker.
Thank you, Sneha, and warm welcome to all the participants and to also to our speaker of today, Prajakta Adhikari. Today's topic is effect of Dieffenbachia amina. It's a plant, indoor plant for the reduction of VOCs on indoor air quality. So, indoor environment quality has certainly come to center stage during the time of this pandemic. The quality of air we breathe has become very important as we are concerned about bioaerosols and pathogens and also the recirculated air and about the air conditioning system itself. Some of the harmful chemicals, though, like VOCs and some of them more importantly, like formaldehyde, for the time being, they have taken a backstage, but they are as potent and dangerous, and therefore they need to be considered as indoor environment pollutants. Prajakta's research was in this field, an empirical research, and like all empirical studies, it had that ability of bringing out a new finding, new knowledge, and giving us new insights in this realm. The important thing in this kind of study is to maintain the reliability and validity of the research process and the research methodology and the various methods involved. And it is this all this onus comes on the researcher who is fully responsible and has to take utmost caution while doing such kind of research. Prajakta Adhikari has these wonderful qualities and has been one of the outstanding students as well as a researcher and has done remarkably well also in her professional career. So let me formally introduce you to Prajakta. Prajakta Adhikari is an environmental architect, an alumnus of Rachna Sansad Institute of Environmental Architecture, Mumbai. Her interests are in the field of sustainability, environment, and teaching. And over 5 years, and she has over 5 years of experience in teaching, while simultaneously also involved in research work. Currently, she is a research associate with CEPT University on a research project related to thermal comfort. She has worked also as a Smart City Fellow in 2019 under Government of India's Smart City Mission and developed a tool called Enable, which helps stakeholders in the city to visualize and monitor traffic patterns. She was previously associated with Bharatiya Vidyapeeth College of Architecture, Navi Mumbai, as an assistant professor, and also, of course, Rachna Sansad Institute of Environmental Architecture, where she, assisted in the design studios and also taught several subjects. She was also involved in our team at Rachna Sansad, which worked for the preparation of a roadmap for implementation of energy conservation building code in the state of Maharashtra. And beyond that, she has also worked in several research projects that we initiated with Godrej Interior on VOCs and furniture between 2013 and 2015. And she plans to continue in this area of research and analysis in the environmental field. So I hand over to you, Architect Prajakta Adhikari. Prajakta, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for this introduction and also for the opportunity given to me to present my research work that was undertaken as a master's thesis in 2013. And for the constant support and guidance that you believed in the topic that I wanted to do and that I finally could achieve with flying colors. So I'll start sharing my presentation. Is the presentation visible?
Yes.
Okay. So hello all. To start with my presentation, my research topic that I was focusing on, the name of my topic is Effectum Dieffenbachia amina, a plant which is also in common name is called as dumb cane, for the reduction of VOCs on indoor air quality. So this was a research dissertation taken under during my master's thesis in the year 2013. And I was guided by two very eminent people, Dr. Rakesh Kumar, who's a director of NEERI, and Dr. Ashok Joshi, who's an environmental specialist and has a long 55-year-old experience in this field of environment. So as you see, my topic here has three major parameters or three points that I've been talking about: effect of Dieffenbachia amina, which is the plant which I'll be talking about; reduction of VOCs. So VOC will become my another parameter that I'll be talking about; and indoor air quality. So what is indoor air quality? I'll be taking my presentation ahead in explaining these three parameters, then my research work and the current scenario with respect to research. So how did I come to this research question or this research topic? So in summers of 2012, I was visiting a relative in Sion Hospital who was admitted in Sion Hospital, and he was quite doing well, was in the recovery phase and was in the general ward. So I went to meet him, I greeted him, but what caught my attention was the walls of the general ward where he was admitted, and there were several other patients also which were there. And what caught my attention was the walls had turned green. So the turning of green means it had molds on the walls. It had leakages. There was a lot of humidity which was there inside the structure. So this was what caught my attention. I, being in the perfect health that time when I visited, started feeling stuffy and claustrophobic at a point. I could imagine how the patients would be feeling there who are already recovering due to some of the other diseases or are having already some health issues. And I could notice that a lot of patients were already coughing. The entire indoor environment was not very healthy. So when I came out, I started thinking about the entire indoor air quality that was there inside the general ward. And just for me to take believe the entire situation, I just took a walk inside the hospital. I went to the passages, and what I could see was everything. The atmosphere was very humid. There was a lot of molds that I could see on the ceilings or on the walls, and that is what caught my attention. So when I started researching a lot about these molds and how these molds impact our health of a human being, I started looking into more indoor contaminants, doing my research more. And also that time I was a student in my master's course. I started reading a lot of literature went under my eyes, and I started questioning a lot to my faculties about how these contaminants start affecting our health. And what I could find out was that these contaminants, these indoor contaminants, directly start affecting our lungs and then the entire immune system. So when I started reading more about what else other types of contaminants do affect you, I started reading about also VOCs, the volatile organic compounds. And that is when at some point I knew that this is the topic, the research topic that I want to take up as my master's thesis. And this entire one visit that I made to the hospital helped me to come to my research topic. So to start with, this is a basic fact of the total 8 million worldwide deaths that happen per year from air pollution. Over half are said to have been caused from indoor air pollution. This is what the World Health Organization said, and this data is not the recent one, but which was mentioned in 2010. The latest data is quite shocking, which was given out in 2017 for India, which is 1.2 million early deaths in India have been recorded only because of indoor air pollution, which is quite a huge number. 1.2 million deaths only because of indoor pollution is something that should catch our attention, and we should start acting towards it. So, what is indoor air quality? Yeah. So what is indoor air quality? It is best defined as the quality of air within or around structures. So the space that we are into, the air that is around us or around our structures is what defines indoor air quality. It is also in relation to the comfort and the health level of the occupants. It gives out environmental characteristics like that affect human health, comfort, work, or performance. And these are concentrations. The IAQ characteristics are concentrations of pollutants in indoor air, as well as air temperature and humidity. So the what simple basic facts that are given out on the left side are, so 90% of our lives we spent in the indoors, and looking at the current situation in the pandemic, it's 100% that we are there in the indoors. So 90% of our lives, including when we were born, in the homes, then the schools, colleges, offices, everywhere we are there still inside. And what happens is the indoors is generally more polluted, 3 to 5 times more polluted than the outdoors. So the common indoor air pollutants that affect us are, these are airborne particles, there are indoor formaldehyde, it's household odors and gases, there's ozone, and there's carbon dioxide. We'll go into these details in my further slides. So what are the typical indoor air pollutants that affect us? There is mold that is on the walls. So that is what I could notice when I went to the hospital. There is pet dander, which are found usually on the pets if you have in your households. Then there is various volatile organic compounds that usually comes from the paints or the cleaning things that you use. You have asbestos, then you have lead that is also found in the paints, now banned after 2017 banned, but used to be found in the paints. Then you have carbon monoxide, tobacco smoke, and other byproducts of combustion. And then you have ozone from ozone generators. So what are the signs of poor indoor air quality, or what is the point where you start feeling uncomfortable inside a space? Either you have a dirty or a broken HVAC equipment, you have stale or stuffy air, then you have noticeable odor indoors, you have lack of air movement, you have molds, then you have excessive humidity. So basically excessive humidity or odors, some noticeable odors, are two very simple things that make you start feeling stuffy or claustrophobic, and you want to go outdoors to feel better, or either you want to get the outside air inside, you want to ventilate your space. Now what happens because of this poor indoor air quality? There are two things that can affect your health. One is your sick building syndrome, and other is your building related illnesses. So what is a sick building syndrome? Now sick building syndrome is a discomfort, any discomfort or acute health you feel only when you're inside the building. In very simple words, only when you're inside a building you start feeling uneasy, or you're very uncomfortable inside a space. But building related illnesses are something, or these are diagnosable diseases or conditions, allergic reactions you take away with yourself from your office space or from the space that you have been for a long time, or a building, to your home. So something that is being diagnosed is your building related illnesses. And sick building syndrome generally doesn't get diagnosed, but it is something that you keep feeling to yourselves, some discomfort that stays with you when you are in the indoors of the office space. So what are VOCs? The VOCs are, they stand for volatile organic compounds. These are generally gases that are emitted from certain solids or liquids. They are available, you'll find them in paints, cleaning supplies, pesticides, building materials, furnishings, permanent markers. So this is something that you can recognize with, because at the point where you open a paint box or you open your permanent markers, there's a specific odor that comes out of these. So these are the volatile organic compounds that come out of these things. And due to the indoor environment, natural lack of natural ventilation, when you lack a natural ventilation, these VOCs get trapped inside your buildings, and the amount of percentage that gets trapped is higher in the buildings in the indoors than the outdoors. So in the outdoors, what happens is, because it's all open, the VOCs can dissipate very quickly. But indoors, it takes time. It disperses very slowly, and that is why it feels trapped. It gets trapped inside. And as an occupant, because you are more exposed to the higher concentration of these VOCs. So in a technical definition, the VOC is any organic compound having an initial boiling point less than or equal to 250 degrees Celsius, measured at a standard atmospheric pressure of 101.3 kilopascals. Now, what are the types of VOCs? So World Health Organization has defined these types of VOCs as, there are three types. One is VVOC, which is very volatile organic compounds. Then you have volatile organic compounds, and then you have semi-volatile organic compounds. So these ranges or these types can be formed on the basis of the boiling point range. And where can these be found? So the VVOCs are generally found in the gases, propane, butane, in the gaseous forms. VOCs are generally in your paints. So you have formaldehyde, you have toluene, you have acetone, which are generally found in your paints or in your thinners or in even your nail polishes, which are available. Then you have semi-volatile organic compounds. So SVOCs are generally found in your pesticides and fire retardants. So the IAQ standards, do we have IAQ standards? We do have IAQ standards. Initially at the earlier stage till 2010, 2005, we were referring to standards given by ASHRAE or EPA. Now we have our own standards which are given out by ISHRAE. ISHRAE is Indian Society of Heating, Refrigerating and Air Conditioning Engineers. It was formed in 1981. So this is the book published by them. This is the standards published by them. And if you see here, all the indoor contaminants have been mentioned here, and the parameters have been given on where what is the standard for each of them. If you see here, the VOCs fall under these, which are the TVOCs, which are equivalent to isobutylene. And if you see here, the μg per meter cube is micrograms per meter cube of air. And what we are looking into is something which is less than 200 is the parameter that I am looking into in my further research work. Now, what effects will these TVOCs or the total VOCs will have on us? The short-term effects that you see here are headaches. You can have headache, you will have nose or throat inflammation, you will have coughing, you will cough when you are inside a space, and there is also the presence of VOC in larger concentration is there. You can have pneumonia, you can have bronchitis, and then skin irritation. But the long-term effects, if you see here, are very scary to say. They start affecting your central nervous system because of the constant headache that you will have, or the anxiety issues. It can develop anxiety issues in you, and that is the long-term effect that it can have. It can have cardiovascular diseases, you can have respiratory diseases, which is asthma or cancer. It can impact on your liver, spleen or blood, and it can also impact on your reproductive system. So altogether, if you see the long-term effects given because of the TVOCs, it's actually harms your entire body. It harms your entire immune system. Now, what are the things that produces these VOCs? You can find these VOCs coming out of the following three categories, basically, which is building materials. Then you have home and personal products. You have fuels and machineries. So in building materials, you can find VOCs coming out of his carpets and adhesives. You have paint, you have composite wood products, you have solvents, and you have varnishes and vinyl flooring. In home and personal products, you have air fresheners, you have cosmetics, you have cleaning products. And in fuels and machinery, you have cooking, you have dry cleaning, you have photocopiers, you have tobacco smoke which is around you. So these are different things that produce VOCs. And if you try to understand this, at any point of given time, be it the home or be it the office, at least you are surrounded by at least five of these things. So you are always in a space where you are surrounded by VOCs which are emitted by at least five of these things around you. So now, coming to the connection between VOCs and paints, because my study was looking into VOCs coming out of an indoor thing that is being used in the indoors. So I took paints to be looked upon. So high levels of VOC solvents are used in paints, which contribute in pollution and they reduce the overall indoor air quality. You must have experienced this when you visit a place which is freshly painted. You feel a certain order which is there, and maybe at some point if you spend a larger time into that, you can have headaches, you can have irritation in your throat, in your eyes. So this irritation is caused due to the VOCs that are present in that indoor air. So so now what is happening is there are a lot of governing bodies that are coming up with initiatives and certification programs to explain to the consumers that we should use low VOCs. Also, the paint manufacturers have been told to put the VOC content value on their paint boxes. But as a layman, we generally do not look into all this VOC content. Everybody is not that, we don't understand the meaning of what risks that the VOCs will have on us. So we now have low VOCs or water-based paints that are available with us. But what happens is, because they are volatile, these compounds vaporize and emit gases. So after the paints have also dried, the emissions keep coming in. So it is said that paint, for an example, emits only half of its VOCs in the first year. So we think that after we move to a new space and the space is newly painted, we try to flush out the indoor air with bringing out the outdoor air inside. But these paints keep on emitting these VOCs for a longer period. Now, coming to the plant that I selected. So where did it all start? So there was a research done by NASA, which was done in 1989. A scientist named Bill Wolverton, when he was with NASA, and also later, he did the study with plants to understand their effect with these indoor contaminants. So NASA published a study titled Interior Landscape Plans for Indoor Air Pollution Abatement, where he analyzed 12 plants and measured their ability to reduce these chemicals. So this benzene, formaldehyde, and trichloroethylene are called as the big three bad. So he tried to understand how these plants can be used to reduce the effect of these three bad chemicals. So they found out was low light requiring house plants along with activated carbon plant filters have demonstrated the potential for improving indoor air quality by removing trace organic pollutants from the air. So his entire research that he did, he could see positive results, and hence NASA came out with a list of certain plants that can help to reduce these chemicals which are there present in your indoor environment. The report also suggested to have at least one plant at every 100 square feet at home or at office space. So this is the list of plants that NASA came up with. You see there are a lot of plants over here, but I'll point out to 2-3 plants which are generally available or you can see in your surrounding, which is already there. You see spider plant, which is generally there. You see golden pothos, we called it as the money plant. Then you have aloe vera for the medicinal properties. Also, you find it planted around you. And you see snake plant, which is there in your surroundings. Now, how did I come to choosing the plant that I chose? My plant that I chose was Dieffenbachia amina. And also, I'll tell you why it is called the dumb cane. So, Dieffenbachia is a genus that belongs to the family of Arakia. So, this was the point, and this was a very crucial point in my research where I wanted to select the right plant that could give me the results that I was thinking of, or my hypothesis had set for. So I was introduced to Dr. C.S. Lattu, who's a botanist, and he retired as the head of botany, as the department of head of botany and a department of science at the Institute of Science. He has decades-long experience in this field, and he was the person who made the most crucial he came at a point where this crucial decision was to be taken. So we started looking into the different types of Dieffenbachias that are available in the entire world, and we also saw why this particular plant that NASA introduced was taken. So the reason why did not we choose the same plant that NASA chose was because the plant that they have given was growing well in the US climate. We wanted something which could grow very perfectly, or which could suit very perfectly in the Indian climate, or basically which could suit here in Mumbai. So we started looking into the all varieties. There are 13 varieties which are there in Dieffenbachia. And finally, we picked up Dieffenbachia amina as the variety which we'll be experimenting with. So the plant that you see at the extreme right is the plant that I chose. If you see visually, there's not much difference that you can distinguish each and every plant over here. But looking into the properties on how it will react, and the temperature, the light requirement, the water requirement, the humidity requirement, Dieffenbachia amina was what we chose. Also, we looked into what all plants in the Dieffenbachia family, or in the Dieffenbachia genus, will help reducing the indoor air contaminants. And this was perfectly what we could find. So Dieffenbachia amina was the plant that we chose for the study. Now, coming to why it is called dumb cane. It is called dumb cane because of a very the dumbest thing that the plant does is, maybe you can call, is it has oxalate crystals in the leaves, and only when a pet or a toddler or a child will chew the leaf, his vocal cords will go numb for a few minutes. That is the reason it is called dumb cane. And but we did not we kept in mind while using this plant for experiment, but we also were sure that the this research has been because taken for air conditioned spaces. There will be no point where any human being is going to actually go near the plant and try to chew a leaf, so it will not cause any toxicity to any human being while the experiment was done, or maybe later it will be used also. Now coming to my research, which is the actual research that was performed. The research was performed for a, 4-day period, and the aim and objective of the research was, the aim was to study if the indoor plant, the Dieffenbachia amina, helps in reducing the VOC emissions emitted by indoor paints to improve the indoor air quality in air-conditioned office buildings. So I was looking at VOC emissions as as one of my parameters, the indoor plant which already was chosen, the indoor paint that will give out the VOCs to improve the indoor air quality for an air conditioned office building. And my objective was to identify an effective indoor plant, which was done. Dieffenbachia amina was the plant, and to check the effectiveness of selected indoor plant for the selected indoor air contaminant. So to see to understand the relation of the plant and the contaminant, the VOCs, what relation do they have, or do they help in some way? Do they have an adverse effect? To understand that. The methodology was quite simple. It was a 6-step methodology. Hello. The methodology was very simple. We started with selecting an indoor air contaminant. So the story that I narrated, it was I made sure that VOCs is what I am looking into right now. Then designing of a controlled space for experiment. My further slide will show how this controlled space was designed. To select an indoor plant for the experiment, Dieffenbachia amina was already selected. Then selecting the instruments and the sampling method. Then performing the actual experiment with selected parameters and analysis of the experiment. So moving ahead, just to tabulate what my parameters and what I selected was, the indoor plant I've already mentioned, it was Dieffenbachia amina. One number of plant will be tested. The indoor air contaminant was volatile organic compounds, VOC. The source of contaminant. Now, because this was an experimental setup, we created a chamber which was to be, in which the experiment will happen. So for the contaminant to be used, right, for this experimental purpose, what we used was a mount board sheet, which was painted by a branded gloss enamel having VOC levels of 120 grams per liter. I'm purposely I'm not taking the name of the paint that was used for the experiment. Now the instrument used for measurement was a gas chromatograph FID and a gas chromatograph mass spectrometry from Shimadzu company. Now this entire analysis of the experiment was done with help of Ruia College, chemistry lab Ruia College. Though they helped me to understand the results that were coming out. Now, what does a gas chromatograph do? It is basically it's a chemical analysis instrument which is used for separating chemicals in a complex sample. So if you have a complex which has a lot of chemical compounds, this instrument helps you to give out the names of it and to understand what is the area or what is the percentage of every compound that is present into the sample. The airflow rate for sampling was decided to be 1 liter per minute, and the absorbing media was graphitized carbon tubes. So graphitized carbon tubes are it was activated charcoal plus glass wool. The period of sampling was 10 minutes, and the time of sampling was 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. So every time, the two time slots, 11 and 3 p.m., 10 minutes was the time where the sampling will happen. Now coming to the planting method, the planting method was kept is very easy. Generally, the way we plant our trees for our indoor spaces. A pot was used with a provision for ventilation and irrigation. So small punctures were put in the pot, and then the small gravels or earthen pieces were put at the bottom so that they have air gaps with them. Then the mixture of coconut husk and soil was added to the pot. It was not very compactly pressed. It was very loosely kept. Not a lot of compaction was added to it. Then after putting the mixture, the plant was put in the pot. So if you see here in the picture, this is the first is where the earthenware pieces have been put. Then you have the coconut husk and the soil that has been put. Then we are planting the actual plant, that is the Dieffenbachia plant, and then adding more a mixture of coconut husk and soil just for the pot and the plant to have stability. The preparation of chamber. Now this was something again which took time for me to decide on how to design the chamber. So what we narrowed down to was a 12 plywood test chamber was made. So with dimensions you see here, and with removable lid, because every time I need to do the sampling, the lid had to be removed. The introduction of the plant also required me to remove the lid. But if you see here, the plywood that is being used here, the plywood has an ability of releasing formaldehyde. So I did not want my entire chamber to be polluted with formaldehyde already. I just wanted to test only the VOCs that were coming out of the paint, but nothing out of the chamber itself. So what we did was we lined the entire inner side of the chamber with a 26 gauge stainless steel sheet, and also covered it with the edges also. So if you see here in the first picture, this entire lining is being done with the stainless steel sheet, which is also later this was lined on the edges also. The stainless steel was lined, and this is how the chamber was created. Now the chamber only has an opening to pass a 12 silicon tube, which will supply air towards the absorption media. Only for the air to pass through the absorption media, this 12 chamber, it had an opening of 12 That 12 opening will be seen in the further pictures. Now the sampling schedule. This was very important to decide on what time will the sampling be done. So as I told you earlier, the sampling schedule or the sampling lasted for 4 days, and there were four types of samplings that were done, as you see in the chart. So there was type A, type B, type C, type D. And so the type A, where we would do a baseline sampling or to understand the background concentration, to check if there is the air inside the chamber is pure, there is no other contamination which is found inside the chamber. The second would be the type B, if you see here, is to understand, is to introduce toluene and the filter paper. And why toluene? Because it is the most primary content of a paint or of a thinner. Hence, we decided that we'll introduce toluene also to perform a background check if the experiment is performing well, if the chamber is performing well. The type C was to introduce a painted mount board, so which will give out the emissions. The paint will start giving out the VOC emissions. And type D was to introduce with the introduction of potted plant where the painted mount board surface is already there. The time slot were decided as 3 p.m. and 11 a.m. So the first sampling will be done on the first day. If today is the first day, the first sampling will be done at 3 p.m. today, and the second will be done tomorrow morning at 11. So the entire overnight, the entire time was given for stabilization, also for more VOCs of more emissions to out, so that the second sample, the 11 a.m. sample, could show quite a good result on the concentration of the compounds that are there in the chamber. Now, coming to the temperature and humidity, as I mentioned earlier in the while introducing the what is IAQ, temperature and humidity are two different environmental characteristics that affect the indoor air quality. So the research, because it was being aimed for an air-conditioned office space, temperature and humidity were the primary parameters that were considered. These are the noted readings that you see here on the right side are the readings, are the actual readings actually of the space for temperature and humidity. And they were recorded at every point that the sampling was supposed to happen at 3 and at 11 a.m. These temperature and humidity readings were recorded. So the temperature ranges, if I try to see, the temperature ranged from 22 degrees Celsius to 26 degrees Celsius, and humidity from 35 to 70 35 to 70%. Yes. Now coming to the sampling procedure, this was a bit complex procedure. It included introduction of few chemicals, and not being of actually the background of handling these chemicals, Dr. Joshi helped me to understand the properties of every chemical that we were introducing, and also the exact steps in which this sampling procedure was supposed to happen. So the step one was what to do was to put an absorbent filter tube inside the chamber, and to inject an initial dose of toluene. I told why toluene was decided to be used. So to inject an initial dose, and then the chamber was kept for an hour. It was given in 1 hour to equilibrate before taking the initial sample. So this 1 hour equilibration time is for toluene to start emitting the gas in the chamber inside, so that in the sampling we could detect the presence of toluene. Then later, about 30 liters of air was passed over the absorption media for 10 minutes. 10 minutes was the sampling time that was decided, and 30 liters of air was passed over that absorption media. Now, what was this absorption media? The absorption media was made up of graphitized carbon, that is charcoal, and glass wool plugs. So if you see in the image on the left side, the tubes with the black content, if you see, that's charcoal and it has glass wool plugs. So that was our absorption media, which will trap our VOCs, or which will trap the chemical compounds that are present inside the chamber. Then the next step was later, the step was to use the solvent, and hexane, it's a solvent, to be poured through the absorption media wherein the VOCs are already tapped. So what we did was, after the air was passed and the absorption media could in 10 minutes of sampling, the absorption media could absorb all the possible chemical compounds that are there in the chamber. The solvent N-hexane as a solvent was poured through the absorption media. So N-hexane has the capacity to transfer the chemical compounds, and later all the VOCs that are trapped in the tube will be transferred to the N-hexane. So this eluted solvent with VOCs, so this N-hexane, which is the solvent which is eluted now and has possible VOCs which are trapped inside, are recovered later, will be given to for sampling to be tested by the GC, gas chromatograph method. So these samples later were taken to Ruia College and they were tested through the GC machine. and sampling was carried out at intervals of several hours as per individual conditions. So this so the same process was repeated for every sampling time, or the every sampling category that you saw, A, B, C, D, every type, this entire process was repeated. Now, these are the images of the actual research chamber. So this is on the right side corner is the test chamber that was created. And now here you see the edges have also been lined by the stainless steel sheet. This machine that you see here helps the air to pass through the adsorption media. So the thing that you see here on the small is this that silicon tube, which outside of the box has the adsorption media and will pass the air through the adsorption media. This air has already will have all the concentrations, all the contamination of the chemical compounds which is there inside the chamber will be trapped by this machine and will be given out. Here you see the another image where it has been covered, and there is a plant that you see. The plant which was decided is being kept inside, and outside here, if you see this black tube is the adsorption media which is present. So this is when the box is open and the plant was just introduced inside the chamber. This is a very closer look at the small 12 silicon tube coming out and the adsorption media which is attached to the silicon tube. So this adsorption media was later Yes, this absorption media was later taken out, and hexane was poured into these tubes, and the solvent, the solution that I used to get was later sent to Ruia College, or was later taken to Ruia College for the further analytical processes. Now, these are the results that came out of my analytical process. So this is the first sample that came out, and here if you see the first sample, that is sample A, and it shows just one peak. This is the peak that is there. So that is one peak is only of one chemical compound, and what identified with this was this one peak on in sample A was N-hexane. So N-hexane, because it was used as a solvent to remove the VOCs trapped in the adsorption media, this is what was caught by inside which was detected by the GC machine. The next sample, if you see sample B1, it is again N-hexane that you see, which was trapped. So at this point, till this point, the experiment partially proved right, or it showed results that N-hexane, because it was poured through the absorption media, it got detected in the solution. But we were waiting for the further result, the samples to show that this experiment was actually working with the other contamination or the chemical compounds also. The next sample that you see started showing two peaks. So one, the larger peak here is N-hexane, and the smaller one that you see here is toluene, because just to check that the experiment is working, toluene was something that we introduced in the earlier stages to see that the experiment is working and the methodology did really work with respect to what it was thought for. So toluene was a slighter peak of toluene was seen here. So this was a stage where it proved to me that the methodology is working right. And now is the stage where I can introduce the painted surface and later the plant also. Now sample C1 is a point, was the stage where the painted mount board sheet was introduced to the chamber. And if you see here, these are different peaks that you see here. And there are 68 peaks of chemical components that had got identified. Now, how were they identified? So the gas chromatograph machine has an inbuilt library inside the machine itself. So the peaks that get identified, it starts giving you the retention time, the area of percentage of area that the peak is present, and the name of the chemical compound also. So C1 was where we got 68 types of chemical components. C2 here was 92. So if you remember in my previous slide, the first sample that was taken was always at 3 p.m. and after an overnight stabilization period, the next sample was taken at morning 11 a.m. So after the stabilization time here, when you see it is 68 at 3 p.m. and after an overnight stabilization, the peaks had got there was an increase in the number of peaks which went to 92. So 92 types of chemical components got identified. Now, sample D1 was taken only after the plant was introduced. So the D1 sample was also at a point when the plant is introduced and 3 hours of stabilization period has gone. So if you see here, there are 70 types of chemical components that got identified. So the last C2 showed 92. Now here it has been reduced to 70. So there was a slight approval of that the plant was working as desired, as thought as it will work. So it started reducing the chemical components. We had miraculous result when the second day sample was taken, that is the next day 11 a.m. sample. So after a 20-hour stabilization time or 20 hours, the overnight, the plant was kept inside the chamber. What we could see was 55 types of chemical components got identified. So the highest peak that we saw was 97 and it came down slowly to 55 just in 20 hours. So this is the cumulative of all the samples that were taken. So if you see here, sample A was one, which is N-hexane. Sample B1 was again one, which is N-hexane. Sample B2 is where toluene was introduced to the chamber and it also detected toluene over here. Then we had sample C1 where the painted surface was introduced, which showed 68 peaks. After overnight keeping the painted surface inside, it went up to the max of 92 peaks that were analyzed. And later, after the introduction of the indoor plant, it came down to 70. And again, after a 20-hour period of stabilization, it came down to 55. Now, these entire, the samples of C1, C2, D1, D2 have been analyzed in this table here. And if you see here, the things marked in red, if you see here, we have trichloroethylene and benzene. So as I told you, trichloroethylene, formaldehyde, and benzene are the big bad three, which harm us or which are the major pollutants in presence in the indoor air quality. And they were, we could see the presence of trichloroethylene and benzene. Now, benzene was came as a shock to me because benzene is something which is banned in India. You can't have benzene in your paints because that's highly toxic to your immune system and to your health. But we could find traces of benzene. I could find traces of benzene in the chamber. And the things that you see here in blue is nonane, cyclohexane, heptane, and other few things which gradually disappeared only after the introduction of the plant. So here you see sample C1, C2 was only where the paint media was there inside, and D1, D2 after the introduction of the planted pot. So there's a gradual decrease in all the quantities that you see here. You have there's a 4.49 trichloroethylene went up to a peak here because the emissions were on by the painted surface. But then after the 20-hour period of stabilization, gradually it came down to 2.84 also. But toluene, because I said it is the primary content that is present in the paints, it kept on rising. And uh, we did not really go ahead of 4 days. So I did not really went up to checking if toluene component really did come down or no. But benzene was something that disappeared. So if you see here, it had a presence of 2.67%, then it came down to 1.23, 0.77, and eventually it disappeared. So these are few compounds that actually disappeared from the list only after the introduction of the plant system. Now, the analysis that I came down to was that the amount of VOC concentration that is present in the indoor air in the test chamber is widely affected by the indoor plant. And we could only believe this because the results were very crystal clear. They showed us that there is a reduction of these VOCs, and the reduction resulted by approximately 64% of reduction was seen only after the introduction of the indoor plant. So you see, it was from 97 compounds, it came down to 70, and in 3 years, and after a 20 year stabilization period, it came down to 55. So it was quite an evident reduction that was noticed, and 64% was a great amount of reduction that was seen. Certain things that I would like to discuss here was that though the experiment shows positive results with respect to the improvement of the indoor air quality and the contamination or the compounds went low, more research is required in this field to find out the long-term effects of the indoor plant on the VOCs. Because I said the toluene, the percentage, the area percentage of toluene kept on increasing. So what would have happened if the indoor plant would have been kept in the chamber for a longer time, which was not tested? The experiment only lasted for 4 days. And for the sake of the experiment, the source of the VOCs was taken as the painted mount board. But in the actual case, it will never be the case. It are your real walls which you are surrounded with will be emitting the VOCs out to you. Also, the readings were taken in a controlled condition just to understand, or they were purposely done to understand that the entire concentration, the removal of VOC happens only because of one medium, that is only because of the indoor plant, and nothing else acts to reduce the VOCs. Also, what my study did not look into was, the study did not observe any effect of these VOCs on indoor plants. So do the indoor plants have some effect on themselves because of the VOCs? But one thing that we did was, at the start of the experiment, we took the measurements of the leaf, every leaf of the plant, and also at the end I measured every size of the leaf, and it came out to be same. So the leaf did not shrink really, or it did not go pale yellow, it did not burn. So the longer term effect was not studied here. Short term, I could not find anything that could that hampered the effect, that hampered the indoor plant itself. So what happened next was, after this research was done, I was given a chance by Roshni ma'am to work on another real life project which looked into contribution of furniture to VOCs in open offices, and it was done with a very reputed furniture manufacturing company. So different components of an indoor space, components like the gypsum ceiling, the carpet tiles, the modular furniture, were tested to understand the contribution of VOCs by each component in the indoor air. So, and the study was a great success. It was published, and we could find out which component contributed to what amount of VOCs in this indoor space. Now, there are certain good examples that are around us, which people have been introducing plants to their indoor space to have a better environment inside. So the first here is the Archiplan International, which is an architectural consultancy in Gurgaon. They have used a lot of indoor plants. They have a vertical wall system, a vertical garden also in their office. The second here, if you see, is the Blue Chapter. It's a restaurant in Bangalore, and it has used almost 40,000 plants in different forms. There are creepers, there are potted plants, there are vertical gardens that they have used in their entire indoor space. And the third very important example is which is there on the poster also. It is, the picture is of Paharpur Business Center. So this business center in Delhi, it has introduced 1,200 plants for a 50,000 meter square area, and for a 300 occupant building. And the positive results that they could see out of this after introduction of plants, what are the 20% of there was a rise by 20% in the productivity by their employers in the work. Now, what is happening in the current scenario? This research that I did was back in 2013, and NASA's research was in 1989. But currently, in the last 10 years, the research that has happened is, so a study that was recently published in a Journal of Exposure Science and Environmental Epidemiology in November 2019, a scientist named Waring, he studied the previously published scientific studies and also all the plants that have been told by NASA, by other scientists, that they help in reduction. So what he says is that the densely gaseous chambers in the lab don't mimic the typical household or the office environment. He says that plants can technically remove a minute amount of airborne toxins, but to have to compete with the air exchange, you would need an invisible amount of plants. So he says that these small potted plants of maybe 5 6 potted plants will not help you in a way the mechanical ventilation or forceful ventilation would have helped you. So what are my recommendations? General recommendations that I have after my research work were, you need ventilation. That's the primary thing that you need. You have to make sure that you provide plenty of fresh air. Then using these products, you regularly clean your AC filters, you keep your carpets clean, you introduce indoor plants to your space. And introduction of indoor plants not only because they will reduce your VOCs, but also they have a positive aura in your space. You should use water-based paints or low VOC paints, and throw away unused or little used containers, because they keep on emitting these VOCs again and again. The use of eco-friendly cleaning products, and also choose your furniture very wisely. Specifically for offices, I would say is to well ventilate your space naturally, mechanically, in every way that is possible, with maximum number of plants you could plant inside, or it is possible for you to have indoor plants inside your space. If you have space crunch, you can have vertical gardens that could be incorporated also. The takeaway that I had from my entire research process, or the literature that was reading, is that indoor air quality is very very important when it comes to an interior space. As an architect, or as an individual, when we go to look for a new place, what we see is only light and ventilation. Light is good, ventilation is good, but indoor air quality is equally important. That needs to be taken care of, or needs to be concentrated while you choose a place, or where you are inside a place. And in the times of COVID, like this times where you are 100% you're inside your homes, or uh, in your own spaces, you need your indoor air quality to be the best. Then indoor plants help improving the aura of the place. So they give a lot of positivity. It boosts your mood, it gives the productivity rises, you have concentration, it increases your creativity levels also. For our corporate offices, it adds a life to the sterile space. It gives privacy, and it can also help reducing in noise levels. And my last statement here would be, architectural environment must be one. In earlier times, people were never thinking architecture as something different, environment something different. It always went hand in hand. But today, what happens is we only think of architecture while designing a space, and environment or the nature is introduced later to a space. But it's our duty to think it as one, to go it as take it one as hand in hand, and then design a space. Thank you.
Thank you, Prajakta. That was just fabulous. What an exhaustive research work you have done, and you have taken us through this 1 hour, I think, of journey of your research. And also you showed us your motivation, the methods were explained in detail, and finally what is happening currently in this field also. So thank you so much. I hope that it serves as an inspiration for especially architects, for whom research methodologies and research methods are not, this kind of research level has not been taken at least postgraduate levels. So I think it will be very, very useful. It will be very inspirational for a lot of students. Thank you so much for taking us through this. At a certain point, while you were explaining about the chemicals and the toluene and the trichloroethylene and all of these things, I felt that maybe this is not an architect speaking to us, maybe some biochemistry or chemistry student or person speaking to us, or something like that. So how did you manage to really get into this area? Was it really difficult? Was it a completely new subject? I mean, did you feel that you are completely going into new territory, or were you very familiar and you liked it? And so how was this experience of, and is it like, what would you advise for students who would like to explore and do research in this area?
So, ma'am, when I started doing my research, this was completely a new area that I was looking into. But the topic that I was looking into, it needed it to go to a few of the chemical side, to chemical steps, and that was when Dr. Joshi was very much. He came in at a point where I was lost during my research, and I did not know how to go about with these chemical names. I could not even pronounce these things earlier. I had to do a lot of literature study into understanding their chemical properties. How do they react? What are VOCs? How is the testing material method done? So it was again going. It felt like I shifted my stream from an architecture student or an environmental student to chemistry student. But he held it my hand throughout, and he made it look very easy to me by making me actually understand each and every component of why we are doing it, how it should be done, and he just made it very simple. But this was something that was a very challenging phase for me, and I'm glad that I stick to what I wanted to do. And all my faculties that times around me supported the entire thing that I wanted to do, and they stick by to the however time it was taking. My research was it was not that at first shot I got everything right. I had to reevaluate my entire methodology. I had to reevaluate my process. It took time, but I'm glad that it happened. It was a positive story.
Yeah, as you say about Dr. Joshi, I know that he always makes things very simple. It's
Yes.
like when you have a tough problem in front of you, he says, Roshni, this is so simple. I'm sure that you had a wonderful guide, also Dr. Rakesh Kumar and Dr. Joshi combination. I'm sure you got very good guidance, and I think excellent work. In terms of methods, I just had a few questions. So you had two chambers in which you did the test, like one chamber with the plant and one without the plant, or you had one in which earlier you put the, just without it and then with the plant. So how was it exactly? Can you little bit elaborate on that?
Yes, ma'am. So the chamber that we designed was only one. We did not have two different chambers because it might have reacted in two different ways, and we did not want to lose the continuity of the emissions that were coming out. So we kept the chamber one. So the chamber first, it was detected for a baseline detection was done. It was a first step. Second, we introduced toluene because to see that the chamber works, the absorption media works, just to confirm to that toluene was something that we injected. Third step was where I introduced the painted surface, and only in that same chamber the potted plant was also kept inside. And this was done because till the time that the potted plant was introduced, uh, almost 2 days time was given for the emissions to come out. So that would have been a lot of emissions, a concentrated contamination that was already there inside the chamber, and then only it was possible to see if the indoor plant really helps in reducing the concentration, or vice versa. Does it help or does it not help? So the chamber was kept one, and slowly and steadily, stepwise, these things were introduced inside the chamber.
Okay. So, also in terms of your final findings, it definitely shows that this particular plant is able to absorb or reduce the level of VOCs in an interior space. So, would you say that the sick building syndrome or any building related illness or VOC emissions can be reduced in a given space? And did you come up with any kind of numbers, like, for this area, how many number of plants I would require or anything like that?
So, ma'am, I have been reading to a lot of literature also after the research was done. And I could find a very interesting research that is being done in Taiwan. I could not really find anything for India, any research done here, but very beautiful research done in Taiwan, where they did a comparative study between two offices, which was done, and the 51 healthy subjects, like 51 healthy occupants, were tested, one in the presence of the indoor plants and one without the indoor plants. The environment was completely clean. It was same office but two different floors that were tested. And what they could find was the office space where it had indoor plants that were introduced, they see there was a 24% reduction in the sick building syndrome. So people had lesser complaints with respect to irritation, the acute discomfort that they have or health issues that they face only when they were coming inside the building. They did not face it where the plants were present in a particular office space. And coming down to what office space where you have, I've also read researches about, because you have photocopiers in office space, you have these X-ray machines which are, or printers which are generally there. Now you have with, if your boss, you have them in your own room, but if you're sitting in an open office, you have them at some one corner. So generally when you visit that one corner, there's too much of concentration of VOCs which are there in that area, because you have printers, then you have markers kept there, you have X-ray machines. So research suggests that that is the area where you should have large number of potted plants that should be kept. Either 5 6 of plants should be kept there. So a space of maybe a room of 3 meters by 3 meters room, you need to have at least 3 to 4 plants that can have. And these plants are not huge ones. These are your like 3 feet, 2 feet, 3 feet plants, which potted plants which are possible to have in your indoor space.
Wow. So there was a question here. I think you almost answered it, which is asking about. It is from Rohit Rajora, which is about how many plants will we need to clean a room of 10 feet by 12 feet, which is what I think you explained, right? 3 to 4 plants would be
3 to 4 plants would be and
medium-sized potted plants.
yes, and if you don't have, like there are issues of space crunch, you can always have creepers. Like there's money plant which does grow in a creeper form. So you can have creepers. You can try to have it in small bottles, and try to just decorate your room with the number of plants you can have. And this money plant is something that is, you can have it n number of ways in different formats and bottles and whatnot in your indoor space.
Okay. We have a question from architect Sunanda Satwa. She is thanking you for your wonderful research, and she asks that the plant was kept in an enclosed chamber for 4 days. Would the absence of sunlight have any impact on the readings, and was that taken into account?
Sunanda, so what happened was the plant was not kept inside the chamber for all continuous 4 days. The plant was introduced to the chamber only the day where the after the painted media was kept inside the chamber. So the initial 2 to 3 days, the plant was given water as regularly you do to your other plants. It was kept in an indirect light also. Only the day it was kept inside the chamber, a day prior to that morning itself. So if my first sampling was supposed to happen at 3 p.m., that morning itself the plant was kept close to the chamber and was then introduced inside the chamber. So the plant actually stayed inside the chamber for just for a day, that is 24 hours, not more than that.
So there cannot be any negative impact or something. That's her question, right?
Yes, so I did not really find any negative impact after the study was done. I and Dr. Lattu, we were hoping to see some negative impact, that is maybe the edges of the leaf going brown, or maybe a burning sensation that you see on the leaves of the plant, or they going pale yellow, having spots of yellow spots on the leaves. But we really couldn't see anything. Maybe we could have kept it for a longer time, we could have seen some adverse effect, but we did not see that. The research did not go beyond that. So
So I think time constraint is also very critical in a master's dissertation.
yes, yes.
So thank you. So I mean, coming to that, continuing with that question. So she asked you about sunlight, and I was wondering that the planting material. So is that also important? Can one plant keep a plant, indoor plant like Diphylum amina in any case, or is the planting medium also an important component? Also, in your research, did you put the entire plant inside the chamber, or was it just above part of the plant minus the soil? So how did you do that? And also, I mean, if somebody wants to know about the planting material, what would be your
So what I did was I kept the entire plant inside the chamber, and once it was kept inside, of course, it was not watered. There was no the indirect light was the only source of light that was coming to the plant, but no direct sunlight was allowed to reach to the plant. But purposefully it was not allowed to reach to the plant because it might have had adverse effects on the experiment also. So the indirect light was efficient for the plant to sustain. And with respect to growing this plants in the normal condition, the soil content was, the potting method was as simple as what we do for the other plants. So there were gravels kept at the down of the pot. Then you have your soil plus your coconut husk mixture, and it was watered not very frequently because Dieffenbachia or the other indoor plants also, they don't require much amount of water because they are not in direct sun. The water doesn't really evaporate very fast, and the checking method for how much water is required was very easy. So if I see that the first inch of the soil is dry, then only I used to water the plant. Otherwise excessive water is not required for these indoor plants. The soil needs to be moist but not soggy enough that there's a lot of water content inside the soil or the roots. So it was just kept moist. A finger was, I used to poke my finger to see if the soil still sticks to my finger. If not, I used to water it a little bit. Otherwise it used to be, staying healthy.
So even for people who want to keep the plants indoors, what would you recommend? You would recommend that they keep the soil in the soil, or can it be without soil, soilless, like using some kind of other medium, like other growing mediums for plants are also available. Even gravels can be used or something like that. So would that be recommended, or would you think that soil is beneficial?
Dieffenbachia does require soil to grow. It is a plant which grows really fast. So it has a humongous, a lot of leaves that really start growing. So it requires soil, but few other plants can also grow in gravels. Like for example, money plant, it does grow in water also, basically in hydroponic system. So it grows in that. So it depends to each and every plant, I would say, on how it will grow to its best capacity. But for Dieffenbachia, yeah, soil is something which is required.
Okay. So there's a question from architect Priya Murkut. She's asking about the mount board that you introduced. So mount board, would it also have had emissions, and would it add? Did it also add to the emissions which were from the paint? So she's asking whether the mount board itself was a source of emissions.
So the mount board was not really a source of emission because in the earlier stage where we introduced, we did the baseline detection to understand if any concentration of VOC is there inside the chamber. The mount board minus the paint was already present inside the chamber, but nothing really came out of the mount board because we couldn't see anything in the results. There was, except N-hexane, no other concentration of any chemical compound came out. It was only after the painted surface, the paint was applied onto the mount board and was introduced to the chamber, we could see huge peaks of concentrations which were there.
Okay. So there's also a question from Shilpa Bhopatkar. She is asking about do the indoor plants need to be put in sunlight for some time?
Yes, they do need sunlight. So once in a week is enough for them. 30 minutes, 40 minutes, once in a week, it's fine for them to go into sunlight. So what we did was before this experiment started, because the plants were selected 1 week before only, and we brought 3 potted plants. So if one could not really live up to the expectations, it could not survive the entire office space, the condition, it might die. So we, out of one plant, we created 3 small saplings or 3 plants out of it, and all the 3 were kept for one day. It were kept in the sunlight for an hour or so, but not more than that. Otherwise, the indirect sunlight works perfectly for them.
I also think that many of these indoor plants, yes, they can survive with indirect sunlight. They need not be placed in direct sunlight. So even if you have enough light in your room, it should be fine. You don't need to put them into sunlight or something. Now you mentioned that your source of VOCs is paints.
Yes.
So I was wondering that are there some the paints are the major source of emissions, VOC emissions, probably in indoor areas, or even there are other sources like even ply and other boards wherever adhesives are used, even carpets. So are the paint companies coming up with some innovations in this field? Have you examined anything new in this area?
Yes. So, one thing I would like to say is because we found traces of benzene in the results during my studies, benzene was something that was already banned by the government, but still we could find sources of benzene. In 2017, MOEF came with a notification of also banning lead from the paints because lead directly affects your immune system and it is very toxic to your health. So, paint companies like Nerolac, Asian Paints, they have all stopped usage of lead in their paints, and they have also come up with, of course they do have low VOC paints and water based paints also, but recently in this year January 2020, Asian Paints came up with something called as the first organic paint, which is called as Nilaya Naturals, and it is made out of soya castor seeds and neem oil. So that is, they've come up with an organic paint. Of course, we have not seen the how successful these paints are because it just happened in Jan, and of course, the researchers following on these paints will come up soon. But this is something that the paint industries are looking into on how they can reduce the VOC emissions in their paints.
I hope that more paint companies will be doing this and we will have more options available. This is very good news. Now, it's just slightly deviating from your main area of research to about plants itself. There are some research indicating that indoor plants or maybe plants in general, they do emit carbon dioxide in the time when they are not undergoing or not performing photosynthesis. And there are excessive this especially in interiors or in office buildings or sealed buildings. There can be a net buildup of carbon dioxide because of the indoor plants. Did your study or your current research take you anywhere on this subject, and especially on this particular plant? Would there be an adverse effect if people start putting these plants in their offices? Would there be some adverse effect to people?
So, of course, it's true that plants do give out carbon dioxide at night, and the concentration of carbon dioxide can actually go high when the offices are locked up at nights. So, I've read a quite literature about how do people deal with these areas where the carbon dioxide levels are really high. So, it has been stated that you, of course, you have your CO2 sensors which are there in the offices, and the CO2 sensors do show you the amount of carbon dioxide concentration which is there in the air. So the easiest way is to mechanically ventilate your entire space in the early hours of your office. So the management team that reaches the office first just can entirely forcefully ventilate the entire space. The second thing is what I've seen is the usage of artificial light. So photosynthesis is something that is done by the plants, and the moment the photosynthesis stops, plants start giving out carbon dioxide. So if you want the photosynthesis to be continued so that the plants don't give out CO2, you can use artificial lights. Of course, the photosynthesis process slows down to not what it will do in the natural light, but it happens. The photosynthesis still happens in a smaller percentage, and the CO2 emissions reduce to a certain amount. So this is what can be done so that a lot of CO2 concentration is not locked up inside your office space. But one interesting study that I could see was five plants were taken. I really don't remember the other three names, but one was ficus, and second is Dieffenbachia himself. So these two plants have the capacity of also taking inside carbon dioxide. So as other plants give out CO2s at night they work in a different method. They also start taking inside CO2. So Dieffenbachia has can take in VOCs also, but it can take in CO2s at night times also. So this was something which came up. I read it very late in my research, but yeah, this was something very a positive story about Dieffenbachia with respect to CO2.
Okay, that's good news as well. And I hope that people who are using indoor plants, and if they have come across this kind of a study or somebody has told them, all they need to do is probably flush out the office in the morning, and any carbon dioxide, maybe if it all is there, should be removed out of the office, should not be an
Yes.
issue. So that's very good. I just also had maybe another question, also slightly out of your research area, that is about the other types of chemicals. Like we've heard, you told us a lot about what is volatile organic compounds, and how they affect us and so on. But the whole area of indoor air quality in the started in the Western world, because of their sealed buildings and so on. And there the concern was with another type of chemical, which is radon and other radioactive gases. So I don't know if
Yes.
that is a concern in India. Have you come across studies where Indian situation, these kind of gases can be trapped inside, and does your research show anything about this?
Yes, at the earlier stage where I was looking into all the indoor air contaminants that come out through radon was one that I, of course, read about. And because in the Western world, it is a problem in the sealed buildings. Here, with respect to India, we have radon coming out in majorly all of the rural areas. Because we have our houses which are directly made upon soil or on mud, these gases, the radon gas comes inside your structure through your foundation or through your soil. So that is something which is very harmful to your health. And generally people in the rural areas, the percentage of lung cancer patients are really very high, and that is only because of radon. Their presence in radon for a longer time, they being into that entire environment for a longer time, is what is affected. And that too also for women, because they spend a lot of time indoors, especially in the rural areas. Women are almost inside, preparing food or cooking or doing their household chores, something which is there. But what I've also read is designing of your foundation can help you to reduce these gases that are coming up. So if you have a plinth that is being raised, or if you have a basement that is being there, it can trap the passing of these gases through your floor levels can be reduced. And if it is being contaminated in your basement also, what you can do is to just flush the entire air by bringing the natural air or the outside air inside, and the polluted air to be thrown out. So yes, it affects a lot, and there have been a lot of research which is done in southern India, not with respect to on the health effects. We know it causes lung cancer, but what can be really done to reduce these levels? But a lot of research done in Karnataka, specifically in Karnataka, is been there are a lot of been studies where you can find the effect of radon on these on females especially. So yes, there's a lot of literature available on that.
Wow. So we would think that rural houses are have no problems, especially flooring which is made out of mud. But mud can also release the radon gases, which can be very harmful. So probably ventilation is a very important aspect in these houses, and
Yes.
one should encourage them to not shut their houses, close their windows in the night, or have some source of removing these gases which may get trapped in the night. So that was interesting. Priya Murkut has one more question here. Would it be possible to provide a list of indoor plants which are beneficial uh, to enhance the indoor air quality?
Yes, it's very much possible. The list is being given by NASA, but what I would recommend is a few of the plants are easily available in the climatic conditions that suit for us, our environment too. I would have really loved to take up this research ahead to make a more list of these plants, because as I chose Dieffenbachia amina, which suited the climate for Mumbai and the entire environmental conditions of here. I would have been glad to take this ahead and testing more different plants whose whose genuses can be found here in this, which suits Indian origin over here. So list prepared by NASA is easily available on internet, but I would insist people to see if something closer to the Indian climatic conditions could be found, and then can be introduced to your structure.
Okay. So I think there are not more questions in the chat box. There's one more. No, that's just about your general information. So I think I would come to a close now, except for asking you one last question. You
Yeah.
have been giving us very good answers to all. It seems you've done a lot of research. So, what would your general recommendations be for improving the indoor air quality in, say, homes or offices, or in general, or maybe specifically to homes? What would you give a message to people about indoor air quality?
So at homes is actually very easy than office spaces because natural ventilation is something which is very much easy for us to do. We can ventilate our space when and where possible. If we want to ventilate it for a longer time, it is possible to do so. Second, I would say is to go to more towards eco-friendly products. We have a range of eco-friendly products that are available in the market. Maybe they cost us a bit higher than the other ones which emit a lot of VOCs, but that is something that we need to understand. The more I think you pay to the cost, the better your health is going to get in the coming times. So recommending a lot of eco-friendly products, cleaning products also which don't use a lot of chemical components, or basically something also that doesn't give out a lot of odors, because when you have a lot of odors coming out, maybe it is some natural fragrance that they advertise a product has. It is always some presence of some chemical compound that is there in the product. So something which is odorless helps you to stay safe in your indoor space.
So thank you so much, Prajakta, for giving us this very detailed presentation and for answering all the questions that came up on the chat, as well as generally other questions. Thank you for this presentation. Now I hand it over to Sneha.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Prajakta. I thank you on behalf of Institute for sharing your research and your expertise with all our participants. Thank you, Roshni ma'am, for summing this beautifully for us. As mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, do join us for our next session, which will be our IA's first Public Trust Day on 17th October 2020. More updates on same will follow soon through mails and social media pages. We would like to thank all who are a part of our virtual team family on Instagram and Facebook and are making us stronger with your support. If you aren't a part yet, do follow us on Facebook and Instagram page for further updates. The link to join our pages has been posted in the chat window. Also, subscribe to our YouTube page and do check our past webinars. We have covered 12 webinars till now on varied topics. We would also be announcing our short certificate courses, so stay tuned. Thank you all for joining today. Take care, stay safe, bye bye.
Thank you.